I came for my birthday, my 82nd, and they said, "The adults are talking now." It was my son's wife, Susan, who said it. She didn't even look at me. Her eyes were on some friend of theirs, a woman with sharp cheekbones and a laugh like breaking glass. My son, David, did look at me. He gave a little shrug, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. A smile that said, "What can you do?" I was in the middle of a story about my father and the first car he ever bought, a 1938 Ford. He'd saved for 6 years. He paid in cash, every dollar a testament to calloused hands and a straight back. I was trying to explain the smell of the upholstery, that mix of old wool and hope. I was trying to explain what it meant to own something, really own it. I had just gotten to the part about the first road trip, to see the ocean. My hands were moving, shaping the memory in the air. The adults are talking now, Frank, the words hung there. They weren't shouted. They were just dropped. A simple statement of fact. A curtain falling. The story about the Ford died on my lips. My hands fell to my lap. They felt heavy, empty. I didn't get angry. I have been angry before. Anger is a hot thing, a thing that burns through you and leaves you hollowed out. This was not that. This was cold. It was the cold of a key turning in a lock for the final time. It was the quiet click of a circuit breaker flipping in the dark. Something settled in me, a fine, heavy dust of certainty. I looked around the room, my living room. It was filled with their people, David and Susan's friends. They had brought wine in fancy bottles and food in foil trays that they'd heated in my oven without asking. The music was too loud, a thumping beat that vibrated in my teeth. They had pushed my armchair, the one my wife Eleanor always said was molded perfectly to me, into a corner to make more space for mingling. I was a ghost at my own birthday party, a piece of furniture they had forgotten to put in storage. I stood up. Nobody noticed. The conversation flowed around me like water around stone. I walked down the hallway to my study. The door closed behind me, muffling the party to a dull, irritating pulse. The room smelled of old paper and wood polish. My smell, my life. On the desk was a photograph of Eleanor. She was young, laughing into the camera at a beach, the wind catching her hair. We were so poor then. We had nothing but the time in our hands and the love in our hearts. We built everything that mattered from that, everything they were celebrating with in the other room. I sat in my desk chair, the leather cool against my back. I didn't turn on the lamp. The fading light from the window was enough. I just sat there. I listened to the grandfather clock in the hall, a sound so familiar it was part of my own heartbeat. Tick, tock. Each tick was a second of my life, a second I had given, a second I had worked and worried and saved for them, for a future I thought we were all a part of. Talk. The future was now, and I was not in it. The adults were talking. I didn't feel rage. I fell in alignment, like a chiropractor had put his hands on my soul and given it one sharp, clean twist. Everything clicked into place. All the little hurts, the forgotten anniversaries, the condescending explanations of how to use a television remote, the decisions made about my life without my input, they all snapped into a single, straight line. It was a line that led from them to me, and I was on the wrong side of it. The next morning, I signed my entire stock portfolio over to my live-in caretaker, Maria. Maria had been with me for 3 years. She came after Eleanor passed, and my legs started to get unreliable. David and Susan had hired her. They'd handled it all online, presented her to me as a finished fact. "She'll handle the cooking and cleaning, Dad. It's for the best." They called her the help. I called her Maria. She was the one who was there when I woke up from the nightmares. She was the one who knew I liked my coffee black, with 1 grain of sugar, not a spoonful. She was the one who would sit and listen to my stories about the Ford or my time in Korea, and her eyes wouldn't glaze over. She would ask questions. "What did the ocean feel like that first time, Mr. Frank?" That morning, after the party, the house was a wreck. Wine glasses on the bookshelves, plates with dried-up bits of food on the end tables. A red wine stain on the rug Eleanor had picked out. David and Susan were gone. They'd left late with a cheerful, "Happy birthday, Dad. We'll get someone to clean this up tomorrow." But Maria was already there. She was on her hands and knees, dabbing at the wine stain with a cloth and a small bowl of soda water. She didn't complain. She just worked, quietly, methodically, restoring order. She looked up as I came into the room. Her face was tired, but she gave me a small, genuine smile. "Good morning, Mr. Frank. Happy birthday." It was the first time anyone had said it that day and meant it for me, not for the occasion. "Thank you, Maria," I said. My voice was hoarse. I watched her for a moment. Her careful, respectful hands. She was tending to my home, to my life, to the memories held within these walls. She wasn't family by blood, but she was performing the function of family, the function of care, the function of seeing. I went into my study and closed the door. I took out the portfolio statements from the top drawer. I looked at the numbers. They were large, larger than my father could have ever imagined. Each digit was a piece of my life. Overtime of the plant. Weekends spent fixing neighbors' cars for extra cash. The small inheritance from my parents, invested wisely, just as my father had taught me. The life insurance policy after Eleanor was gone, a final, heartbreaking gift I couldn't bear to spend, so I invested it too. It was a legacy. It was meant for David, for his children. It was the final chapter of my story, the one where I provide for them, even after I'm gone. But they had already decided I was gone. They were just waiting for my body to catch up. I found the card from Mr. Henderson, my lawyer, in the old Rolodex. His son had taken over the practice, but the name was the same. Henderson and Son. The ink was faded. My hand was steady when I picked up the phone. There was no tremor. No hesitation, just the cold, clean certainty of a man who knows exactly what he is doing. I asked Maria to come into the study. She looked worried, her brow furrowed. She probably thought I was going to complain about the state of the house. "Please sit down," I said, gesturing to the chair opposite my desk. She sat on the very edge, her hands folded in her lap. I slid the most recent portfolio statement across the desk. I didn't say anything. I just watched her face. She glanced at it, then looked back at me, confused. "Mr. Frank, I'm giving this to you, Maria," I said. Her eyes widened. She looked back at the paper, really looked at the number at the bottom. A soft gasp escaped her lips. She pushed it back toward me immediately. "No," she said, shaking her head. "No, Mr. Frank, I cannot. This is your family's. The adults are talking now," I said, the words tasting like rust in my mouth. I told her what Susan had said. I told her about the look on David's face. I told her about standing in a room full of people and being utterly, completely invisible. Tears welled in Maria's eyes, but they were not for herself or for the money on the table. They were for me. I could see it. It was the purest empathy I had felt from another human being in years. "They do not see you," she whispered. "They have not seen you for a long time. You see me, Maria," I said. "You ask about my day. You listen to my stories. You make my coffee right. You honor the life in this house. That is worth more than blood. It is worth everything." It took a long time to convince her. She was a good woman, with a deep sense of propriety. She worried what people would say, that they would accuse her of taking advantage of an old man. "Let them," I said. "They have been taking advantage of an old man for a decade. The only difference is you do it with kindness. This is not a gift for future services, Maria. It is a reward for services already rendered. For decency. For seeing a man instead of a bank account." She finally agreed, with tears streaming down her face. She agreed on the condition that we set up a portion of it in a trust for her own children's education back in the Philippines. I nodded. "As you wish." The meeting with the younger Mr. Henderson was brief and professional. He had his father's cautious eyes. He asked me 3 times if I was of sound mind. He asked if I was under any duress. "I have never been of sounder mind, son," I told him. "And the only duress I'm under is the slow, crushing weight of being treated like a child in my own home. This action is the cure for that duress, not the symptom of it." He must have seen the clarity in my eyes. The paperwork was drawn up. Maria was there. She was nervous, her hands trembling slightly. I put my hand over hers. It was steady. I signed the documents. My signature was the same as it had always been. Strong, clear, Frank Miller. I watched the ink dry on the page. It felt like writing the last line of a book. Not an ending, but a conclusion. A point that had been proven. I also had him draw up another document. One that revoked David's power of attorney over my affairs. And a third, which is a new will. In it, The house was left to a historical preservation society. My tools were left to a local trade school. My personal effects were to be handled by Maria. My son, David, was mentioned by name. He was to receive my collection of baseball cards from the 1950s. And nothing else. I went home that day, and the house felt different. It felt lighter. It felt like mine again. It took 2 weeks for the phone to ring. It was David. His voice was tight, strained. "Dad, I just got a letter from the bank. It says my power of attorney has been revoked." "There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake, David," I said, my voice calm. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing. I could picture him pinching the bridge of his nose, the way he always did when he was annoyed. "Okay," he said slowly, like he was talking to a child who had misbehaved. "What is this about? Is this about your birthday? We know the party was a little loud. We're sorry." It was the first apology. A weak, generic thing that meant nothing. "It's not about the party, David. It's about clarity." "Clarity? What are you talking about?" "Dad, you can't just go making these kinds of decisions on your own. You could be taken advantage of." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. "I am 82 years old," I said. "I fought in a war. I built a business from nothing. I raised a family. I think I am capable of making a decision. This is about that caretaker, isn't it? Maria, she's put ideas in your head. She's after your money. Maria has done nothing but her job," I said. A job which, it turns out, included being more of a family to me than my own family. The line went silent for a moment. Then Susan was on the phone. An extension, probably. Her voice was sharp. "Frank, this has gone far enough. David is your son. He's trying to look out for you. You are being childish and manipulative. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Now call your lawyer and fix this manipulative." The word struck me. All those years of quiet acquiescence, of biting my tongue, of sitting in my chair and being their silent, convenient father. And now, the first time I exercise my own will, I am manipulative. "The adults are talking now, Susan," I said. And I hung up the phone. I unplugged it from the wall. The silence that followed was beautiful. The next day, a courier delivered a thick envelope. It contained a letter from a law firm I didn't recognize. David and Susan's lawyers. It was full of legal threats, questions about my competency, insinuations of undue influence. I read it once. Then I took it out to the workshop in the garage. The workshop was my sanctuary. It smelled of sawdust and oil and sweat. The tools hung on the pegboard, each in its place. My father's tools hung on a separate board. Worn, smooth handles, the steel darkened with age. They were tools that had built things. Real things. A crib for my son. A bookshelf for my wife. A life for my family. I put the lawyer's letter in my metal vise. I tightened the handle until the paper was squeezed into a tight, dense block. Then I took a blowtorch, the one I used for soldering pipes, and I lit the letter on fire. It burned with a clean, hot flame. The ashes fell to the concrete floor. I swept them up and threw them in the trash. A week later, David came to the house. He pounded on the door. I saw his car through the window. A new German sedan. I thought about the portfolio that had probably been earmarked for its replacement in a few years. Maria looked at me, her eyes wide. "What should I do, Mr. Frank?" "Nothing," I said. "You should do nothing at all." We sat in the living room and listened to him pound on the door. He shouted my name. He shouted Maria's name, her name a curse on his lips. I just sat in my armchair, the one I had reclaimed from the corner. I picked up the newspaper. I read about the local baseball team. Eventually, the pounding stopped. I heard his car door slam, the tires squealing as he pulled away. The silence he left behind was even better than the silence from the unplugged phone. It was a silence I had chosen, a silence I had earned. Life settled into a new rhythm, a quiet, peaceful rhythm. Maria and I worked out a new arrangement. She was no longer my employee. She was my housemate, my friend. With a portion of the money, she hired a younger woman, a nurse, to come in a few hours a day to help with the physical things I was finding harder to do. The rest of the money, Maria managed with a quiet, fierce intelligence I never would have known she had. She had a mind for numbers. She told me her father had been a math teacher in their village. She set up the trusts for her children. She invested. She planned. She handled it all with a reverence that my son had never shown. To him, the money was a resource, a given. To her, it was a sacred trust, a miracle. We would eat dinner together in the evenings, not in front of the television, but at the dining room table, the table that had been reserved for holidays and special occasions. We made every evening a special occasion. She would tell me about her village, about the scent of mango blossoms after the rain, about her children, who she spoke to every weekend on a video call. I saw them on her screen, bright, smiling faces. They called me Grandfather Frank. I told them my stories, about the war, about Eleanor, about the day David was born. I told her all the stories that my own son no longer had the time or the interest to hear. She listened. She always listened. One day, a small package arrived. It was from my granddaughter, Lucy, David's daughter. She was in college on the other side of the country. Inside was a book of poetry and a handwritten letter. Grandpa, it began. I heard what happened. Dad is furious. Mom won't stop talking about it. They say you've lost your mind. They say that woman is a thief. I just wanted to say, I get it. I remember last Christmas. You were trying to show me your father's watch, and Mom kept interrupting to ask me about my grades. I remember your birthday, when you started to tell that story about the old car, and Dad just started talking over you to his friend about the stock market. They haven't seen you in years, Grandpa. They only see a responsibility. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I never said anything. I was afraid of making them angry. I hope you're okay. I hope you're happy. Please don't be a stranger to me, just because you're a stranger to them. Love, Lucy. I read the letter 3 times. My hands were trembling now, not with age, but with a profound and aching grief, and with a sliver of hope. I had Henderson draw up one more change to my will. The baseball cards were still for David, but my father's watch, the one I had tried to show Lucy, was now for her. I started writing to her. I wrote letters on my old stationery. I told her the stories I had always wanted to tell her father. I told her about her grandmother, Eleanor. I told her about the young man I was and the old man I had become. She wrote back. Long, thoughtful letters about her classes, her friends, her dreams. We built a bridge across the country, a bridge made of paper and ink and shared understanding. One afternoon, Maria came to me in the study. She was holding a large, glossy seed catalog. Mr. Frank, she said, her eyes bright with an idea. The backyard is just grass. So much work to mow. So boring I looked out the window. The yard was a perfect, manicured green square. David had hired a landscaping service years ago. They came once a week. They made it neat. They made it sterile. What are you thinking, Maria? I asked. She opened the catalog. It was filled with pictures of vegetables. Tomatoes, cucumbers, beans, squash. Bright, vibrant colors. In my village, she said, everyone has a garden. Is where we get our food. Is where we feel the earth. Is good for the soul. I hadn't worked in a garden since Eleanor passed. We used to have a magnificent one. Her roses were famous in the neighborhood. I fired the landscaping service the next day. We spent the rest of the spring turning that perfect lawn into a chaotic, beautiful, productive mess. We built raised beds out of cedar planks. My hands, which had grown soft, became calloused again. My back ached, but it was a good ache. The ache of creation. We planted seeds. We watered them. We watched them sprout. Maria taught me about companion planting, things her grandmother had taught her. I taught her how to build a sturdy trellis for the beans from old copper pipes. By midsummer, the garden was overflowing. We had more tomatoes than we could eat. We had zucchini the size of my arm. Maria would cook incredible meals, dishes from her home, filled with fresh vegetables and herbs. We gave the surplus away. We gave it to the neighbors. We gave it to the nurse who came to help. We loaded up a box and sent it to the local food bank. One day, a woman from down the street came by. She was holding an empty basket. Frank, she said, looking at the garden in awe. I haven't seen you look this happy in 20 years. I realized she was right. I wasn't just living in my house anymore. I was living in my life. The final confrontation came on a Tuesday in October. I was on the front porch, reading, when a car pulled up. Not David's sedan, an unfamiliar rental car. David got out. He looked thinner, tired. He walked up the path and stood at the bottom of the porch steps. He didn't try to come up. He just stood there for a long time, looking at me. Dad, he said finally. His voice was quiet. All the anger seemed to have been burned out of him. I folded my newspaper and set it down. I waited. "I got your letter," he said. "The one from your lawyer." "About the will," I nodded. "The baseball cards," he said, a small, bitter laugh escaping him. "The ones you helped me collect when I was a kid." "I remember," I said. "We go to the corner store every Saturday. You'd spend your whole allowance on them." "I don't want the baseball cards, Dad." "Okay," I said. He looked down at his shoes. He looked lost, a man adrift. "Susan left me," he said. "I did not expect that. She said I had become a man who only saw people for their use, their value. She said she saw it in how I treated you, and she realized I was starting to treat her the same way. I didn't know what to say to that. So I said nothing." "The money is gone, isn't it?" he asked, looking up at me. "It's really gone. The money is exactly where it should be, David. It's with someone who values it, and who values the man who earned it." He nodded slowly. "I see." He shoved his hand in his pockets. "I drove by last week. I saw you in the backyard. With her. You were laughing. Building something, a cold frame," I said. "For the lettuce. So we can have it through the winter." "You never laughed like that with me," he said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact. "Assad, kvawat. You never asked me to build a cold frame with you, son," I said, my voice gentle. "You asked me for stock tips. You asked me to co-sign a loan. You asked me to watch your house when you went on vacation. You stopped asking me to be your father a long time ago. You started asking me to be your bank." A tear rolled down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. "Was it just that one thing?" he asked, his voice cracking. "At the party? Was that it?" "No," I said. "That wasn't the thing. That was just the last thing. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. But the camel's back was already broken, son. It had been broken for years. That was just the moment I finally noticed I was lying in the sand." He stood there for another minute. The autumn wind blew a few leaves across the lawn. Can I fix it?" he asked. I thought about that for a long time. I looked at this man, my son. I saw the little boy he used to be, the one who loved baseball cards and stories about old cars. And I saw the stranger he had become. "I don't know," I said. And it was the most honest thing I had said to him in a decade. "I don't know if you can, but I know that it can't be fixed with words, or with apologies, or with promises." "How then?" he pleaded. "You want to fix it?" I said, standing up. My old bones creaked. "Come back next Saturday. Not to talk. To work. The garden needs to be turned over for the winter. The leaves need to be raked. There are storm windows in the garage that need to be put up. Come and work. Put your hands in the same dirt as me. And we'll see. We'll just see." He looked at my hands. Calloused. Stained with dirt. Then he looked at his own. Soft. Clean. The hand of a man who managed things, who didn't do things. He nodded. "Okay, Dad. Okay." He got in his car and drove away. I don't know if he will come back. I truly don't. Hope is a dangerous thing. I have spent too much of my life hoping to be seen. But for the first time, it doesn't matter if he comes back or not. My happiness is no longer tied to his attention. My peace is no longer dependent on his approval. I went back to my chair and picked up my book. Maria came out with a cup of tea for me. Not coffee. Thea. She knew I preferred it in the afternoon. She had seen David's car. She didn't ask any questions. She just set the tea down on the small table beside me. "The sun is warm today, Mr. Frank," she said. "Yes, it is, Maria," I said. "It is," and we sat there together in the quiet, warm afternoon sun. Two adults, talking. The path to this place was not one I would have chosen. It was paved with a particular kind of sorrow, the kind that comes from being unmade by the very people you help to make. But the destination is peace. I learned that a family is not just a thing you're born into. It is a thing you build. It is built with listening. It is built with seeing. It is built with shared work and shared meals and shared silence. It is built with hands that are willing to tend to a garden and to a human heart. My son and his wife, they saw a legacy as a number on a page, a thing to be inherited. I see it differently now. My legacy is this garden, thriving in the autumn sun. It is the letters to my granddaughter, full of stories she will carry with her. It is the future I have secured for a good woman and her children, a woman who showed me kindness when my own blood had forgotten how. It is the quiet dignity of a man sitting on his own porch, in his own home, in his own life. A man who is finally, After 82 years, one of the adults in the room. The greatest act of self-possession, I've found, is not to raise your voice in anger, but to lower it in decision. To stop speaking to those who cannot hear. To stop trying to be seen by those who look right through you. The money was never the point. It was just the language they understood. It was the only tool I had left that could make them stop and listen, not to my words, but to my silence. The silence that followed the click of the lock. The silence that followed the unplugged phone. The silence of a life being lived on its own terms. David did come back that Saturday. He was wearing old clothes. He looked awkward, out of place. He didn't say much. I handed him a rake. I took one for myself. We worked all morning. We raked the leaves into huge, rustling piles. We spread compost over the garden beds. The air was crisp and smelled of damp earth. Maria brought us out sandwiches and lemonade for lunch. We sat on the back steps and ate without talking. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It was a working silence, a silence of shared effort. In the afternoon, I showed him how to put up the storm windows. His hands were clumsy at first, but he learned. He listened as I explained how to seat the glass properly, how to tighten the bolts without cracking the old wood. At the end of the day, we stood there, side by side, looking at the tidy yard. Our muscles ached. We were both covered in dirt and grime. "Thank you," he said. He didn't say what for. He didn't need to. "Come back next week," I said. "The gutters need cleaning before the first snow," he nodded. "Okay, Dad," and he did. He came back the next week and the week after that. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about the money. We talked about the weather. We talked about the proper way to sharpen a saw blade. We talked about the baseball team. We started to build something new. Something fragile, but something real. It wasn't the old relationship. That was gone forever. It couldn't be rebuilt. This was something different. A foundation laid on shared work, not on shared history or obligation. Lucy came to visit for Thanksgiving. She and Maria hit it off immediately, chattering away in the kitchen while they cooked. David came for dinner. It was quiet. It was a little strained, but it was peaceful. He looked at me across the table, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt like he was actually seeing me. Not a father, not a bank, not a problem. Just a man. An old man, yes, but a man. The portfolio is still Maria's. That will not change. That was a line I drew in the sand, and it cannot be undrawn. The consequences of their actions must remain. A lesson learned is not a lesson if the price is refunded. David understands this. He has to. His new life, the one he is building without Susan, without the easy cushion of my wealth, requires him to understand it. He is learning, slowly, what it means to own something, to build it with his own two hands. My life is smaller now, in some ways. It is quieter. The circle of people in it has shrunk, but it is also infinitely larger. It is deeper. It is richer. It is mine. I still wake up early. I still make my coffee, black with 1 grain of sugar. I sit and watch the sun come up over my garden. Some mornings, I think about that birthday party. I think about Susan's careless words. I think about the man I was sitting there with a dead story on his lips, and I feel a profound sense of gratitude. She thought she was dismissing me. She thought she was putting me in my place. What she did, in the end, was set me free. She handed me the key to a cage I hadn't even realized I was in. The cage of expectation. The cage of trying to be what they wanted me to be. I'm no longer in that cage. My name is Frank Miller. I am 82 years old, and the adults are finally talking.